The scream of the alarm clock pierced through a somnial euphoria. The devilish little racket machine rattling like a poltergeist and ringing with all the niceties of a summer hangover fended off the half-conscious swatting of his hand for agonizing seconds. Each metallic pinging of a bell tearing through the peace of his hard-fought rest as his addled ape brain frantically shocked itself awake with a cascade of epinephrine. Moments later, mercifully, the palm-sized device, designed only to rob good people of much-needed sleep in the service of timeliness and productivity, lay quiet on the Douglas fir floorboards beside the bed. Exhausted, beleaguered, and already world-weary, he slowly breathed in the cool morning air, only faintly tasting of sweat, stale coffee, and dry mouth. Liberated from the tyranny of his alarm, the sounds of the waking world began to settle in, slow and soft. The gentle rattle of the ceiling fan, and the occasional tapping of its flimsy pull chains. The unmistakable quiet hum of the electric refrigerator in the next room. The exchange of cawing calls between crows somewhere out past the open windows. And the scant whooshing of early morning traffic on Denny Way. For a few precious, quiet minutes, he considered letting himself fall back asleep. He could blame his alarm or find a doctor disreputable and desperate enough for some cash to diagnose him ill in exchange for a couple of bucks. If he could find a sorry soul still optimistic enough to believe that the dollar would come back. It's not like anyone at the PI would press him too hard either way. The rag had really gone downhill since Roosevelt's kid and her husband had cleared off back out east after her father died. Hell, even if some stiff-neck at the Post-Intelligencer did press him, the folks over at the Star were always looking for a stringer who bothered to write about the little guy every once in a while. Letting out a slow sigh, he took a moment to steel himself, and then rolled out of the warm blankets into the cold dark beyond. The light in the bathroom clicked on with a series of clinks, flickering and faltering, but not yet failing. The face staring back at him in the mirror looked older than he remembered. More tired, more gaunt, in some places, more flabby in others. Studying the gently emerging wrinkles and graying hair, he remembered when those hazel eyes used to shine more brightly, almost smiling all on their own. It had been a while. Thoughtlessly, monotonously, he shuffled through his morning routine. Splash of cold water on his face, brushing his teeth, blowing the snot out of his nose, wetting and ruffling his short brown hair, giving himself a quick spritz of aftershave and cologne, throwing on a shirt that didn't smell too badly and a pair of pants without obvious stains, slipping into his shoes, grabbing his wallet and his keys, and heading back out into the world. All without a hustle. All without a care. It wasn't like the world was ending. It seemed to him that, really, it had ended already. Folks were just lingering on, waiting for the final curtain call. It wasn't a long walk back to the office. Out of the studio apartment door, out the apartment building's back door, down Denny for a couple of blocks, hang a right, and you're there. 5, maybe 6 minutes tops. Short enough to justify grabbing a bite along the way. Brie cheese and apple on sourdough. wash down with the Rainier to help get the engine going. Maybe even a coffee if you had the ration stamps. You really couldn't miss the Seattle Post-Intelligencer building, even on a foggy day. Atop the building sat a 30-foot neon planetary globe plastered with the rotating words, "It's in the PI," and crowned with an eagle with upward stretched wings. Some UW kid, an art student, had dreamt it up, winning contests put on by the paper in an attempt to freshen up its image. It seemed to him like an absurd waste. A symbol of an America that hadn't existed in half of a decade. A glaring symbol of human hubris and arrogance in the face of almost certain doom. Still, sometimes actual eagles would roost atop the edifice. And damn if that wasn't at least a little amusing. The PI office was quiet these days. Local interest stories still got published, but anything national, or God forbid about the war, was almost always pre-written slop straight from MacArthur's people. Most of the guys and gals of the Intelligencer had volunteered with MacArthur's army years ago when it still went by the Western Defense Command, or the Joint Pacific Command, or the Emergency Pacific States Government. The general turned president's latest name for the West Coast outfit was the Pacific States of America. With any luck, maybe this latest name might stick around for a few years before the Arkansas-born corncob pipe-toting savior decided to change it again. The printers should have started running an hour ago, but there was no hide nor hair of any proof of last night's draft. The only sign of life, as a matter of fact, was a light on in Royal's office. It had been years since he had seen Royal smile the way that he used to. So it came as no small surprise when, upon opening the door, there stood the gray-haired 54-year-old Royal Brougham, smiling like he met Babe Ruth for the first time all over again. The once-upon-a-time beloved sports editor and PI employee since he was 16 years old, taken over the show almost 5 years ago. Sitting on the desk, in front of the grinning Royal, sat a hot, fresh galley proof, endowed with the headline, Operation Hercules, an Atomic Triumph.